Hello friends, Namaskar, welcome. Till now we have discussed balance of payment. In the balance of payment only we discussed about current account transactions, capital account transactions and errors and omissions. Now we are going to discuss the concept of reserves. And after that we will discuss some other concepts, for example autonomous versus accommodative transactions, import cover, special drawing rights, etc. Right? So in this session the coverage is going to be like this. We will discuss about the foreign exchange reserves, special drawing rights, important balances, BOP trends since independence, accommodative versus autonomous transactions, import cover and the previous year questions. Now reserves. So in the overall schema of balance of payment, I hope you remember that there was total four components of the BOP. The first component is current account transactions. The second component is capital account transactions. The third component is errors and omissions. And finally we have reserves, right? So this reserves we are talking about here. I hope you got the point. So let us discuss this reserve. So this reserve basically means foreign exchange reserve. This foreign exchange, this can also be abbreviated as Forex. So this is also this is also called Forex reserve. Now it has four different components. First, foreign currency assets. Foreign currency means the currency of all the countries except our own country, right? So those currencies, they are combined together and they are called foreign currency assets. The second category is gold stock of RBI. So all of us know that Reserve Bank of India has a stock of gold. So that stock of gold also becomes part of the foreign exchange reserve. Third, reserve tranche of IMF. We will discuss about it separately. And then we have special drawing rights. This is also of the IMF, right? Now, so before we move ahead, let us see the quantum of foreign exchange reserves in India. So as per the latest economic survey of 2019-20, this foreign exchange reserve, if we calculate in US dollar billion, in 2016-17 the quantum was approximately 370 US dollar billion. After that in 2017-18 it increased to 424 US dollar billion, and in 1920 it increased to 461.2 billion, and this is as on January 2020. So we can see there has been a consistent increase in the foreign exchange reserve. The major reason behind this consistent increase is the increase in the quantum of foreign capital. So the foreign capital in the form of foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment has been increasing. So it is more because of capital inflows rather than current account inflows. So on the current account we have current account deficit, but on the current capital account we have surplus, and because of that there is a increase in the forex reserves. Now coming to the first item. The first item is foreign currency assets. So what are the components of the foreign currency assets? This foreign currency assets consist of three items. What are these three items? The first item is the currencies of various other countries. So the currencies of US, currency of Canada, the currency of UK, the currency of European Union, France, China, Japan, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, so on and so forth. All the other countries except India. That is part of the first component. So it consists of currencies of various other countries. Second, we have foreign currency deposits held by RBI. Held by RBI with whom? So RBI is having the foreign currency deposit. So just like we have our bank deposit with the bank, with a particular bank, similarly these foreign currency deposits are held by the RBI with number one, foreign central banks, right? For example, European Central Bank or any other country's central bank. Just like we have RBI in India, similarly all the countries have their own central bank. So when we have the balances in the other countries central bank, then this is included in the foreign currency deposit held by RBI with the foreign central bank. Then we have foreign deposit with the BIS, Bank for International Settlement, right? So I hope you remember the discussion of the Basel norms. There we discussed Bank for International Settlement is located in Switzerland, right? So this BIS, and the third is non-deposit taking institutions. So there are different institutions, for example, Asian Development Bank, World Bank and other institutions. So the deposit which we have, the RBI have with those institutions, that is also included in the foreign currency assets. Third item is the deposits agreement with the IMF trust account. So there is a IMF trust account. Whatever deposit we have in there, that is also part of the foreign currency assets. Now, because these currencies and deposits are kept with various different countries, therefore the question arises, what should be the reporting language? So in our balance of payment, should we show them in the domestic currency or should we show them in the foreign currency of the respective countries? The answer is, we indicate and value them, we report them at the US dollar value. US dollar value. The purpose is to simplify the reporting. See, US dollar is a very popular currency, and almost all the currencies can be converted into US dollar easily. So we take the US dollar as a common currency and we express all the foreign currencies into the US dollar term, right? So the foreign currency assets, they are expressed in US dollar terms after converting the currencies of various countries by their respective exchange rate against the US dollar. So we see what is the exchange rate and we convert that. With the help of that exchange rate, we convert the foreign currency into the US dollar and we express all these foreign currency assets into the US dollar terms. I hope you understand the concept. Now next is the gold stock of RBI, right? So second part of the reserves is gold stock of the RBI. So friends, I hope you remember that in the banking sector I discussed the concept of minimum reserve system. So the concept of minimum reserve system says that if the RBI wants to issue the currency, then RBI has to keep a minimum reserve of some foreign currency, some gold, etc. So as part of the minimum reserve system, a minimum amount of gold is to be kept by the RBI with itself. So this gold stock is that minimum reserve system gold only, right? So it acts as a backup to the issue currency, right? So this is part of the minimum reserve system. This is part of the minimum reserve system of RBI, and this is kept to meet the unexpected BOP crisis. So in case there is BOP crisis, we are short of capital or current account inflows. In that case, we can make the payment from the gold account, right? So this gold can be used in case of BOP crisis. If we talk about the quantity, how much is the quantity of this gold? So the quantity of this gold is 557.77 tons of the gold, out of which 265.49 ton are kept in the safe custody with the Bank of England and with the Bank for International Settlements. So Bank of England and Bank of International Settlement, BIS, we have some gold with them also, right? So recently there was a news that in the Sonbhadra district of Uttar Pradesh, we found 3,500 tons of gold. But later on we come to know that that news is not correct. The amount of gold is around 125 tons only. So as of now, the RBI has 557 tons of gold, right? Again, this is also expressed in the terms of US dollar. So we don't express in terms of domestic currency, we don't express it in the terms of rupees, we express it in the terms of US dollar only. Now, the third item is reserve trench. Reserve trench. The third item is reserve trench. So reserve trench is basically, let me tell you. So first of all, there is an organization called International Monetary Fund. And this International Monetary Fund, it has various members. For example, India is also one of the members. Now each of these members, they have member quota. That means they have some share in the IMF. For example, the India's quota is 10%. So this we are taking as an example. This is not the accurate figure. For example, India's membership quota is 10%. Now, out of this 10%, the 25% of this 10%, 25% amount of this 10%, this is reserve tranche. So this will be kept with the RBI itself. And this can be used at discretion of India anytime. Right? So 25% of 10% means 2.5% of the total IMF quota. This can be used by India at any point of time for any purpose at its own discretion. Right? Now let us see. A certain proportion of the member country's quota is specified as its reserve tranche. A certain proportion of the members country's quota is specified as its reserve tranche. So this is typically kept as 25%. Certain proportion, as of now, this is typically kept as 25%. The member country can access its reserve tranche funds at its discretion, right? And is not under an immediate obligation to repay those funds to the RBI, to the IMF. So they can access the fund from the IMF, but they are not necessarily to repay, to deposit the amount with the IMF. The member nation reserve tranche are typically 25% of the members' quotas. The reserve tranche portion of the quota can be accessed by the member nation at any time, whereas the rest of the members' quota, that means the 75%, is inaccessible. Right? So I hope you got the concept of reserve tranche. Now, special drawing rights. This is very important concept. Please listen to this conversation very carefully. So friends, the word special drawing rights, this word got originated in 1969. What is the background? So friends, we established the International Monetary Fund in the world, and we wanted that all the countries should involve into the trade and capital transactions with each other in different part of the country, in different part of the world, right? So the countries should transact with each other in the form of import and export, foreign capital investment, etc. For that, there is a requirement of liquidity, right? So we need some liquidity, we need some liquid assets, a common currency, liquid asset, this is liquid asset. We need a liquid asset, a common currency which can be utilized all across the world and which is acceptable all across the world. So we identified that there are two possible currencies. One is the gold, another is the US dollar. So this US dollar and the gold, they are the two possible liquid currencies which are acceptable by the entire world and which are available also, right? But soon we started facing their shortage. So we felt that they are short in quantity. They are not frequently available. They are not easily available. Because of that, because of this liquidity crisis, in 1969, this IMF, it established the concept of special drawing right as an international reserve asset. So this international reserve asset was created. This international reserve asset was created to solve this liquidity problem which arose because of the shortage of the gold and US dollar. So under this international reserve asset, the concept of basket system was introduced. What is the meaning of this basket system? This means that a group of currencies will be kept together, and the average value of all those currencies will determine the value of each unit of this international reserve asset. So this international reserve asset, it will be divided into the units, individual units, and the value of each individual unit is decided by the average price of this group of currencies. So this is the basket system. So initially this basket system was kept at 16 currencies. So we took 16 currencies as part of this basket, and later on it got reduced to 4, and finally in 2016 we also added one more currency of China, and this basket system as of now, it has total 5 currencies, right? So there are few important points to note down. First of all, it is not backed by any gold or any foreign currency. So there is no backing. It is called paper gold. It is called paper gold, and there is no backing of any kind of metal or any other foreign currency asset, right? So the value is derived from all these group of currencies, but does not mean that it is backed by all these currencies. This is the first point that you need to take care. Second point is that it is accessible only and only to its member countries. It is accessible only and only to its member countries. It is not accessible to any other country. Right? So let me write these points separately. The first point is there is no claim. The second point is, so it can be accessed, it is accessible only by member countries of IMF. Third, it is used primarily for BOP settlement by the member countries. So in case any member is, so this is the main purpose. You have to keep in mind. What is the main purpose? The main purpose is if any member of the IMF is facing any kind of BOP problem, the country is facing shortage of foreign exchange reserves, in that case it can use its SDR amount for settlement of the BOP. It can use its BOP, it can use its SDR quota, SDR amount for settlement of its foreign claims, right? So this is part of the foreign exchange reserve only. As part of the foreign exchange reserve, it can be utilized for payment of the foreign obligations, right? So the primary purpose is for using it for the BOP settlement. I hope the concept is very clear to you. Now let us understand from the language part. So in 1960s, we faced the liquidity dilemma under the dollar and gold standard. In 1969, SDR was created and the value of SDR was equal to $1 each. In 1971, in Nixon shock, so there was a incident. This incident is not important for us. That is why I'm just going through fast. Nixon shock, convertibility between gold dollar was ended. In 1974, the SDR adopted 16 currency basket system. So I told you we are under the basket system. In 1981, the number of SDR currencies were cut to 5. In 2001, with the introduction of euro cuts, the number of SDR currencies was reduced to 4. And finally in 2016, so this is 2016, the IMF decided to include the yuan in the basket of currencies. So the Chinese yuan was introduced. So now you can see SDR is an international reserve asset created by the IMF in 1969. SDRs are allocated to the member countries. Please be careful. Member countries in proportion to their IMF quota. So this is allocated in proportion to their IMF quota or membership quota, also called as paper gold, as it is not backed by any currency or precious metal. So there is no claim against this currency. Used only among governments of member countries and IMF for balance of payment settlement. So what is the primary purpose of SDR? BOP settlement only. Now, why SDR was created? So we have discussed this. The primary purpose is basically to overcome the problem of gold and US dollar inadequacy, right? Now, it was created in response to concerns about the limitations of gold and dollar as a sole means of settling international accounts. SDR augments international liquidity by supplementing the standard reserve currencies. So the standard reserve currencies, that is the dollar and the gold, they are supplemented by the SDR to increase the international liquidity. SDR is a reserve system created by the IMF to help the countries to have BOP problems. The member countries have to contribute to this account. So who contributes to this account? The member countries. The contribution is in proportion to their IMF quota. In proportion to their IMF quota. It is held with the government or the central bank, right? Of the member countries. In India, it is with the RBI's exchange reserve, right? So in India, it is part of the RBI's foreign exchange reserve. So we are studying it as part of the RBI's foreign exchange reserve. Now, how do we determine the value of SDR? The value of SDR is based on the basket of key international currencies. So we discussed that there are 5 currencies. First is US dollar, second is the euro of the European Union, third is the Chinese RMB, then we have Japanese yen, and we have British pound sterling. Please remember these 5 currencies. They can be asked in the examination, in the prelims examination. First is USA dollar, then we have euro, then we have Chinese renminbi, then we have Japanese yen, and then we have British pound sterling. These are the 5 currencies. So the question was asked in 2016 because in 2016 this currency was introduced as part of the SDR system, right? So SDR is neither a currency nor a claim on the IMF, rather it is a potential claim on the freely usable currencies of the IMF members, right? So it is neither a currency nor a claim. What is the use of SDR? For balance of payment settlement. This is very, very crucial. The purpose is balance of payment settlement among the members. It can also be used for transactions with the funds. For example, for paying the reserve tranche. SDR denominated bank deposit and loans have been offered in private financial market. So these are the uses of SDR. Now, how much is the value? How much is the weightage of each of these 5 currencies? So we discussed that there are total 5 currencies which are part of the SDR basket system. How much is the weightage of each of these currencies? The highest weightage goes to the US dollar, 41%. Second highest goes to the euro, 30%. Third highest to the Chinese RMB. Then we have Japanese yen, and finally we have British pound. So we do not need to remember the sequence, but we should remember that US dollar is having the highest and British pound is having the lowest proportion. This quota, this weightage is reviewed every 5 years, right, by the IMF's executive board, or it can also be reviewed earlier if warranted by the developments. What is the purpose of review? The review ensures that the SDR market basket reflects the relative importance of major currencies in the world's trading and the financial system, right? So in 2016 we introduced the Chinese yuan, Chinese RMB into the SDR basket. Why? Because the role of China was increasing in the international trading and financial system. So to enhance the SDR's attractiveness as an international reserve asset, we always try to ensure and bring those currencies, those countries' currencies which are having the important role in the market. So we can see reserves, it means foreign exchange reserves, and it consists of 4 different items. The first is foreign currency asset, then we have gold stock of RBI, third we have reserve tranche, and then we have special drawing rights. So there are total 4 concepts. One is current account, we have capital account, we have reserve account, and we have errors and omissions. We have discussed each one of these 4 items. I hope the BOP statement is now very much clear to you. Now let us discuss the important balances. I hope you remember these balances. I have already discussed in the first session only. Here I am giving you for revision purpose and for ensuring that you get 100% clarity about these balances. So trade balance means the export of goods minus the import of goods. So here we do not include the services. Services are not included. Only and only the merchandise item, the goods are included. Only and only the visibles are included, right? So trade balance or balance of visibles. Then we have current account balance. It includes both the visibles balance or trade balance and invisibles balance. This is important. The goods and services balance. Goods and services. The goods balance means trade balance, and services balance means The non-factor services balance. Do you remember the example? For example, financial services, software services, right? So non-factor services means the services other than the factor services. What is the example of factor services? Factor services means payment of salaries for the labor, payment of interest for the capital, payment of rent for the property. So those items which are given as reward for the factor services, they are not included here. Only and only non-factor services, the services which are provided by the financial sector, software, transportation, etc., they are included here. And then we have BOP balance, which means the current account balance plus the capital account balance. So this discussion I kept just for revision. I know that you already know about this concept from the previous session only. Let us see the balance of payment trend in India in the pre and post reform period. Pre-reform period and post-reform period, right? So this reform period basically means the 1991. So when I say reform, it means the 1991, before 1991 and after 1991. So the period 1 starting from the second 5-year plan 1956 till the 1976. So this period of 20 years, during this period of 20 years, we had the heavy amount of BOP deficit. The reason was, first, there were 3 wars. 2 wars with the Pakistan and 1 war with the China. Then there was a situation of drought in around 1965. In the backdrop of this drought only, we started green revolution. Then we faced oil shock in 1973. Because of wars, drought and the oil shock, we had heavy amount of BOP deficit. Then in the next period, that is the period 2, which started from 1976 and continued till 1980, this was a golden period as far as BOP is concerned. India had current account surplus, right? So there was a current account surplus of 0.6% of GDP. India also possessed foreign exchange reserves equivalent to 7 months import, right? So our import cover was 7 months, right? The ideal import cover in India is 6 months, right? We will discuss the concept of import cover in the subsequent slide. Now, the next period is after 1980 till 1991. So here again there was severe BOP crisis because of large state deficit and decline in the net receipt from visible and reduction in the external assistance. This BOP crisis led to major economic reforms. Because of this major BOP crisis, India had to go to the IMF and World Bank and demand the foreign exchange reserve as a borrowing. And the IMF and the World Bank, they imposed certain conditionalities. And they asked India to open up their economy. From that point of time, India opened its economy and the Indian economy was globalized. So from that point of time, we are a globalized nation. Our Indian economy got globalized. So the BOP situation in post-reform period, that is after 1991. So there has been a satisfactory trend after that. And what are the different factors which have contributed to the satisfactory trend? First, there is increase in the balance of invisibles, right? So balance of invisibles, especially because of increase in the software export, that is a non-factor services, and receipt of the private remittances, that is the factor services, right? Or transfers from the abroad. So both factor and non-factor services have seen increase. Second, increase in the NRI deposits. So non-resident Indians, they are depositing the amount in the banking capital head due to special incentives which have been declared by the RBI from time to time. So the Reserve Bank of India from time to time invites NRIs to invest as much capital into India as possible. Number 3, increase in the foreign investment. both FDI and portfolio investment over the years. So after 1991, we in India, we have opened almost every sector and invited the foreign capital, right? Next is rise in the external commercial borrowing over the years. So with the increase in the industrial activity, the commercial borrowing from the external countries, that has been increasing. However, there are some factors which are responsible for overall BOP imbalance, right? Still there is overall BOP imbalance, right? So what are the factors? Number one, increased imports of goods and services, which include what is the reason? What are the reasons for increased imports? Domestic price rise. So the level of inflation in India has been quite high. Because of high inflation level, the prices of goods and services inside India are more than the prices of goods and services outside India. Because of that, the people are encouraged or incentivized to buy the goods and services from outside India. The second reason is cyclical fluctuations. So there are cycles of fluctuation, because of which our exports get reduced and the import increases. Large scale development expenditure. We as a welfare country, we are expanding a lot. We are buying the foreign technology, we are buying the foreign goods for our development purposes. Population explosion. The rate of growth of population is very, very high. Because of that, we are buying a lot. Change in the taste and preferences of end consumers. So the end consumers, they want to import the luxury goods, they want to buy the electronic item from outside India because they are found cheaper over there. So this is the first reason why there is an increase in the import. Second, hindrances in the capital inflows due to political instability. So we can see in India a kind of political instability was seen for a long period of time when there was a coalition government. Because of that, the foreign investors were not ready to come into India. And natural calamity, we can see a lot of natural disasters happening in India, be it the Uttarakhand disaster, Mumbai floods, Chennai floods, etc. Because of that also the foreign investors are hesitant in investing into the Indian market. Then we have depreciation of domestic currency. Because of that, the imports become cheaper and export becomes expensive. Let us move towards the next concept, that is the two different types of transactions in the BOP statement. So if we see the BOP statement, this is the format of the BOP statement. In this BOP statement, we can categorize the total transactions into two major categories. One category till the balance of payment and second category below the balance of payment. This first category is called autonomous transactions, and second category is called accommodative transactions. So from exports till errors and omissions, they are the autonomous, and the reserve use, this is accommodative transaction. Now let us see the difference. So all these transactions, which include all the current account transactions and all the capital account transactions, all these transactions have some profit motive, right? The purpose of all these transactions is the profit maximization. So if we are doing the export, we want to increase our profit. If we are importing, either we are consuming it or we are using it for further production and doing the export of same and maximizing the profit. Similarly, in the capital also, we are borrowing from the foreign country so that we can increase our profit. So somehow the purpose of all these transactions is to increase the profit, maximize the profit. And we can see there are both kind of transactions. We have the current account transaction and the capital account transaction. And these transactions, they are independent of what is the situation of balance of payment. So whether the balance of payment is in deficit or in the surplus, it does not matter as far as these all transactions are concerned. Now coming to the accommodative transaction. Accommodative transaction, the purpose of accommodative transaction is to restore the balance of payment deficit. If balance of payment comes into deficit as a result of all these autonomous transaction, then this reserve will be used. In that case, this reserve will be used to restore the balance of payment deficit, to nullify the balance of payment deficit. So the purpose of accommodative transaction is not profit maximization, rather to bring the balance of payment deficit into equilibrium, right? Purpose of autonomous transaction is profit maximization. Purpose of accommodative transaction is maintaining the BOP equilibrium, right? Here in the accommodative transaction, there is only capital transaction because there is reserve use. The foreign exchange reserve has been used, and foreign exchange reserve is a capital item. It is not a current item. So here it is a capital item and here it is a current item, right? These autonomous transactions, they are called above the line because they are above the balance of payment, and these accommodative transactions, they are called below the line because they are below the balance of payment, right? So overall, can we differentiate between two like this? Autonomous transactions, these are the transactions that take place for economic motives like earning income and profit maximization. So the prime motive is economic. These items are also called above the line because they are above balance of payment, right? These transactions are independent of the state of country's BOP, whether favorable or unfavorable. So whether the BOP is surplus or deficit, it does not matter. Accommodative transactions, these are transactions that take place to cover deficit or surplus arising from autonomous transaction, right? The purpose is to cover the deficit or to restore BOP balance. These items are also called below the line item, right? Because they are below balance of payment. These transactions correct the disequilibrium which is caused by the autonomous items in the BOP account. So we can see here the difference. Autonomous transactions, they are independent of the BOP, and accommodating transactions, they are undertaken to maintain the balance in the BOP account. This is the first category of differences. Second, these transactions take place on both current account and capital account, right? So these transactions take place on both current account and the capital account. However, accommodating transactions, they take place only on capital account, only and only on the capital account. Number 3, these items in BOP refer to foreign exchange transactions which are independent of the state of balance of payment, and these refer to the transactions which are undertaken to cover the deficit surplus in the autonomous transactions. So these are the foreign exchange transactions, and these are the transactions which are kept inside the country only. Apart from that, autonomous transactions, they are above the line, and they are below the line. Right? They cause BOP imbalance, and they restore BOP imbalance. Autonomous transaction, they involve transfer of goods and services and capital. They involve transfer of goods and services and capital across the border. Here there can be transfer of capital in case we have to borrow from outside India, or we have to use the SDR, or we have to use some reserve tranche, right? So in that case there can be transfer of capital. So this is the major difference between the autonomous and the accommodating transactions. You should know this because balance of payment categorizes the transactions into these two categories. Next concept is import cover. So just understand this concept. For example, our monthly import is $100 and our foreign exchange reserve is $1,000. That means our foreign exchange reserve is sufficient to pay for the import for the next 10 months, right? If we have the foreign exchange reserve for $1,000, that means we can pay for the monthly import for next 10 months, right? How do we calculate? So the total foreign exchange reserve divided by monthly import amount. That means we have the import cover of 10 months. So this is called import cover. Ideal import cover is 6 months. So we should have the foreign exchange reserve equivalent to the 6 months of import, right? So import cover of reserves is a traditional trade balanced indicator of reserve adequacy. So the purpose is to check whether the foreign exchange reserves are adequate or not. So this is an indicator of reserves adequacy. It is defined in terms of the number of months of import equivalent to reserves. So we have seen over here the example of 10 months. Here you can see this is also called as import ratio, the ratio of import to the foreign exchange reserves. So for example, the total foreign exchange reserves are $99 and imports per month are $33 billion. That means 1:3 ratio. Economists say that a country's foreign exchange reserve should cover 3 months worth of import. In India, we follow 6 month standard as a tradition. India's import cover fell marginally to 9.1 month at the end of December 18 from 9.5 month. So the purpose of this slide is that you can see that our average is around between 9 months to 11 months. So we are very much safe. We are very much safe because we are having more than 6 months.